Welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're unpacking one of the most debated new laws in India, Section 69 of the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, or the BNS. This single piece of legislation has completely transformed how the Indian legal system views modern intimacy, consent, and deceit. It's a massive shift, and the implications are playing out in real time across the country.
So let's just dive right in. You've probably seen the headlines or heard the rumors swirling around. The big question on everyone's mind is this: does a broken promise of marriage automatically equal a crime? Is every failed relationship now a one-way ticket to jail? The anxiety is real, but as we're going to see, the law itself is much more nuanced than the social media outrage suggests.
In this explainer, we're separating myth from reality. We're going to cover what Section 69 actually is, look at deceit versus failed relationships, the intended inception, the risks of misuse, its impact on sexual autonomy, and finally, how the courts are interpreting it right now.
All right, Section 1. What is Section 69? Let's do a rapid, less than 1 minute breakdown of this specific legal provision before we get into the heavy debates.
Okay, so the crucial takeaway here is that Section 69 explicitly separates deceitful sexual relations from the traditional definition of rape. Under the old laws, these cases were often awkwardly squeezed into the category of rape under the misconception of fact doctrine. Now, the BNS has established a distinct, separate offense. It criminalizes sexual intercourse obtained specifically by deceitful means, or by making a promise to marry without any intention of actually following through. And it carries a really heavy penalty. We're talking up to 10 years in prison. And the legal scope here is really specific. According to notes from the P.L. Raj IIS and IPS Academy, deceitful means isn't just about marriage. It explicitly includes things like a false promise of employment, a promotion, or even suppressing your true identity. So the net of deception is cast incredibly wide, recognizing that exploitation can happen through economic manipulation just as easily as emotional manipulation.
Moving on to Section 2, deceit versus failed relationships. Because, as we're about to see, there's a massive difference between a con artist and a bad breakup.
The Karnataka High Court actually drew a really clear analogy for this. Criminal law is meant to punish calculated deceit, right? Not the emotional disappointment of a failed romance. Deceit is a fraudulent device, basically a lie from day one. Disappointment, on the other hand, is just the collapse of a consensual relationship due to failed affection or changing circumstances. The courts are drawing a hard line here. A failed relationship is absolutely not automatically a crime.
Which brings us to Section 3, the intent at inception. To prove deceit, the timing of that false promise is literally the fulcrum this entire law balances on. Courts actually use a highly logical checklist to determine what's called mens rea. That's the legal term for a guilty mind. The law demands rock-solid proof that the lie existed at the very beginning of the relationship. Judges are asking, did the accused behave like someone planning a future? Did they introduce their partner to the family? Or was it purely hidden? They're looking for hard evidence of deception right from the jump. The Supreme Court of India beautifully captured this perspective. They noted that long-term intimacy is generally viewed as evidence of mutual choice and a functioning relationship rather than initial deception. Think about it. If two people are together for years, the courts find it incredibly hard to believe that the entire relationship was sustained solely by a false promise made on day one. But let's look at the flip side for a second. If clear, objective evidence of deception does exist, courts treat it with utmost severity. If someone secures consent by hiding the fact that they're already married or by fabricating elaborate commitments that are demonstrably false, that is treated as prima facie deceit. In those specific scenarios, the law functions exactly as intended, as a crucial shield for victims of genuine fraud. All right, Section 4, risks of law misuse. This severe legal framework is exactly why the law has become such a highly polarizing zone in practice. On one side of the spectrum, legal advocates like Shani Kapoor highlight a pretty grim reality. Because Section 69 is a non-bailable offense with a massive 10-year sentence, just the mere threat of an FIR is sometimes weaponized. When the law is used not to seek justice but to extort a settlement, well, that fundamentally corrupts the entire legal process. We're seeing exactly how this pressure cooker operates on the ground. Accused individuals are facing these intense marriage or jail ultimatums.
Legal experts are pointing out that when an FIR is used as a bargaining chip for a so-called respectable settlement of money or property, the accusers themselves might actually be crossing into the territory of extortion and criminal intimidation under the BNS. The law was never designed to be a private recovery tool, right?
Now for Section 5, impact on sexual autonomy. Because the concerns about Section 69 aren't just coming from the perspective of the accused. To get the full picture, we have to look at the other side. Feminist scholars and organizations like the Oxford Human Rights Hub argue that this law fundamentally strips women of their agency. By legally cementing the idea that a woman's consent to intimacy is only valid if a marriage is guaranteed, they argue the law frames women purely as naive victims. It pushes this really traditional narrative that completely ignores a woman's independent sexual autonomy.
So the crucial point from a sociological perspective is how this actually plays out in modern society. By focusing so heavily on the promise of marriage, this law risks retroactively punishing consensual live-in relationships when they inevitably break down. Plus, it can be used by disapproving families to police intercaste or interfaith relationships. And because of the way it's drafted, it completely ignores the LGBTQ+ community, applying a rigid traditional framework to the very fluid reality of modern love.
As research from the International Journal for Multidisciplinary Research points out, the statute is heavily gender-specific. It operates on this assumption that only women can be deceived and only men can be the offenders. Many scholars argue that this lack of gender neutrality makes the law feel archaic, failing to reflect contemporary realities where deception and vulnerability can absolutely exist across any gender dynamic.
Which brings us to Section 6, how courts interpret it. We've seen the text and the societal critiques. Now let's see how the judiciary is handling this incredible balancing act right now. 132. That's the number of high court cases analyzed across 17 different courts in recent months. This data gives us a concrete look at how Section 69 operates in real everyday courtrooms, moving us out of theory and into actual practice. And the data reveals a really clear trend. In a staggering 96% of these cases, the courts are granting anticipatory bail or outright quashing the FIRs. Why? Well, judges are actively pushing back against the misuse of the law. When they see evidence that a relationship was long-term, consensual, and simply just broke down over time, they are flat-out refusing to allow custodial interrogation to be used as a tool for harassment. The judiciary is doing a ton of heavy lifting here. The courtroom question almost always boils down to this. Was there a malicious, calculated lie from the very beginning, or is the criminal justice system being invoked just because a consensual relationship broke down? Courts are actively working to make sure Section 69 remains a genuine shield against verifiable fraud, rather than a weapon to settle personal scores.
And that brings us to the core tension of this entire explainer. It's a delicate, incredibly difficult balance between delivering justice to true victims of exploitation and respecting the personal agency of adults making their own choices. As the jurisprudence evolves, we're left to wonder, how will our society ultimately navigate this messy, complex intersection of law, lies, and modern relationships? It's a massive question that goes far beyond the courtroom. Thanks so much for joining me, and keep questioning the world around you.